When I came back from the night shift that morning, a day earlier than scheduled, I was so fried I could barely think. I wasn't even supposed to be home. A power outage at the facility shut everything down, and my supervisor told me to go home, rest, and come back Monday. I didn't argue. I figured I'd sneak in, shower, maybe make a breakfast sandwich, and pass out until noon. That was the entire plan. The house was quiet when I came in. Not empty quiet, just regular morning quiet. Birds outside, fridge humming low. Sarah's car was already in the driveway, which I thought was weird, since she usually left early on Saturdays for her Pilates class. But I didn't overthink it. Not yet. I dropped my bag in the hallway, kicked off my boots, and made a straight line for the bathroom. I was still half in my work clothes, already imagining the feel of hot water on my neck. But when I opened the laundry basket to toss my shirt in, I paused. Right there on top of the pile was something that didn't belong. A thick, forest green flannel shirt. Definitely not mine. I reached in and pulled it out. It was heavier than anything I owned. A couple of buttons were missing. One of the sleeves had a faint tear at the cuff. But what hit me first wasn't the weight or the condition. It was the smell. Cologne. Not just any cologne. Strong, musky, unfamiliar. A scent I'd never worn, and definitely never smelled on Sarah before. It wasn't even subtle. Whoever wore this shirt wore that cologne like armor. I turned it over in my hands, more confused than angry. That's when I saw the embroidered initial on the inner tag. A simple, clean capital R. I just stood there for a second, holding it, trying to make it make sense. It was the kind of thing I might have ignored in any other context. But everything about it felt off. Then I noticed something else, peeking out from the bottom of the laundry pile. I reached down and pulled out a small, crumpled receipt. Cafe Lorenzo, downtown, near the park. Not a place we usually went. Dated yesterday morning, 9:43 a.m. 1 black coffee, 1 oat milk latte, and a blueberry muffin. Scrawled in black pen across the top in fast, casual handwriting. For R. Don't forget the coffee. My heart thumped once, hard. This wasn't mine. Wasn't hers either. The shirt, the scent, the note, all of it. It didn't belong. Not in our house. Not in our laundry. Not in our life. I stared at the receipt like it might change under the light. My mind was doing that thing where it scrambled to find a reasonable explanation. Maybe she picked it up by mistake. Maybe a friend left it. Maybe I was overreacting. But none of it sat right. And that's when I heard the door open. Groceries rustled as Sarah stepped inside. The front door clicked shut. She was humming, casual, light, like any other Saturday morning. I heard her drop her keys in the bowl by the entry and walk toward the kitchen. I didn't move. She was halfway through unpacking something when she noticed me in the hallway. I must have looked dazed because she tilted her head. "Babe?" she said, wiping her hands on a paper towel. "You're home early." "Yeah," I said. I held up the shirt and the receipt. "What's this?" Her eyes flicked to the shirt, then to the paper in my hand. Just a beat too long. Then, instantly, her expression smoothed into something calm and casual. "Oh, that," she said, letting out a light laugh. "Yeah, okay, that's funny. I should have told you. Rachel. You remember Rachel from the gym? She found that in the back seat of her car. Said it must have been her ex's or one of his friends. She asked if I could throw it in the wash because her machine's busted." She walked past me, grabbed the shirt like it was no big deal, and tossed it back into the basket. "I just didn't want it stinking up the car. Didn't think it'd freak you out." I held up the receipt. "And this?" She looked at it, took it from my hand, and squinted at the writing. "Oh, ha, that's hers too, I guess. Rachel always scribbles stuff like that to herself. Probably dropped it when she gave me the shirt." She handed it back. You know how she is, scatterbrained as hell. I stared at her for a moment. There wasn't any panic in her voice. No guilt. Just smooth, offhand confidence. The kind you'd expect from someone used to answering questions quickly. Someone who knew that hesitating made things worse. I wanted to ask why she hadn't mentioned Rachel coming by. or why the shirt still smelled like a man had worn it recently, or why a receipt from yesterday was under the shirt if it was supposed to be from some X weeks ago. But I didn't ask. Instead, I nodded slowly. Okay. She smiled, walked past me again, and started unpacking the groceries like nothing had happened. Humming, checking expiration dates, making room in the fridge. The whole time, I stood in the hallway like a man who had just missed the exit on a familiar road. The water from the shower steamed up the mirror, but it didn't clear my head. I kept thinking about the receipt. The way the note was written, personal, quick. Don't forget the coffee. Not a reminder. A habit. A routine. Something you say to someone when you know how they take it, how they like it, when they expect it. Someone named R. The truth is, I didn't believe her. Not entirely. Not in the way you're supposed to believe someone you trust. But I wanted to. I wanted to believe this was just a weird, random mix-up with a friend. That I was exhausted. That I was overthinking. I told myself I was tired. That I was too used to being on edge from work. That I was seeing connections where there were none. But something about the way she looked at me, that perfect mix of calm and casual, like she'd prepared the answer in advance, gnawed at me. Not because she seemed guilty, but because she didn't seem guilty at all. After I got out of the shower, I noticed her phone on the nightstand. Face down. Charging. That wasn't new. But suddenly it felt new. Sarah used to leave her phone around the house all the time. Unlocked. Unattended. Now, lately, it was always either in her hand, in her pocket, or flipped face down like it needed to avoid the light. I didn't touch it. Didn't dare. That morning, I laid down next to her in bed. She curled into my side the way she always did. Said she missed me. Kissed my cheek. Her skin smelled like vanilla and citrus, like her regular lotion. But underneath it, something lingered. Something unfamiliar. Something sharp. I closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. My mind kept turning, over and over, cycling through details I hadn't noticed until now. Times she came home already changed from work dinners. Nights she'd been vague about where she was. New habits. New scents. New silences. It all used to seem normal. Now I wasn't so sure. After that morning, something in my brain wouldn't shut off. It was like someone had flipped a switch I didn't know existed. I kept replaying the moment with the shirt and the receipt. Not just what she said, but how she said it. Too smooth. Too confident. Like she knew the exact version of the truth that would sound harmless. But once the doubt cracked open, everything I'd brushed off before started sliding into place. Like puzzle pieces I hadn't realized were even from the same box. Started small. Like the workouts. Sarah had always been a morning person. Yoga at sunrise, protein shake, shower, out the door by 8. But about 2 months ago, that changed. Her workouts started happening in the evenings instead. She told me it was because of a new instructor who only did late classes. I didn't question it. Why would I? But the nights she worked out, she didn't come back in workout gear. She came back already showered, makeup off, wearing jeans or sundresses. Not sweatpants. Not even leggings. Just regular clothes. Sometimes nicer than regular. Sometimes with her hair freshly curled. And she always smelled like soap I didn't recognize. There were other changes too. The work dinners, for example. I'd stopped keeping track of them a while ago because she was always involved in something, networking, client events, strategy meetings. But lately, those dinners had gotten more frequent. And weirdly short. She'd leave the house dressed up, tell me she was meeting a designer or a marketing team or whoever, and then be back less than 2 hours later. Not drunk, not tired, just done. When I asked how the dinner went, she'd smile, give me a vague answer, and then disappear upstairs to shower. Always shower. One night, I remember she came back with her earrings missing. The next morning, I found them in the pocket of her purse, tangled up with a hotel room keycard from the Danton. When I asked her about it, she shrugged. Said her company had done a photo shoot at the Danton the week before. Said she kept the keycard in case they needed it again. The earrings? Probably just tossed them in there so I wouldn't lose them. I wanted to believe it. I think I tried to believe it. But I knew that hotel. We'd stayed there once for an anniversary. It was one of those boutique places with complimentary champagne and sleek lighting and no reason for a creative agency to be using it twice in 1 week. That was also around the time she changed the password on the shared tablet we kept in the kitchen. The one we both used for recipes and emails. At first, I thought maybe the update reset it, so I asked her. She just said, "Oh yeah, I had to change it for work stuff," and then walked away. She never gave me the new one. We used to share everything. Now, everything felt slightly off, like a song played just barely out of key. Her texts used to light up her phone screen, long previews, easy to glance at. Now I noticed her settings had changed. Preview disabled. Every message came through as just iMessage or WhatsApp with no detail. It was always face down, always in her pocket or her hand, never left on the couch or nightstand like before. And when she got up to go to the bathroom, so did her phone. I remember once she left it charging in the kitchen while she stepped out to get the mail. It buzzed twice, quick, right as I walked past. I didn't even touch it, but when she came back and saw it plugged in, she picked it up immediately and locked it, without looking at me, without saying a word. Like she'd remembered she'd forgotten something she wasn't supposed to. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself I was tired, paranoid, reading into things that didn't mean anything. But deep down, I knew better. You don't just wake up one day and stop trusting the person you love unless something's already broken. And the worst part was how normal she still acted. She was still Sarah. Funny, warm, thoughtful. She still made us pancakes on Sundays. Still asked about my shifts. Still left sticky notes on the fridge that said dumb stuff like, "Don't forget your lunch or I'll cry." She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. But even that had changed. Her kisses used to be soft, slow, like something meant. Lately, they were more like habits. Polite, hollow, done out of memory, not affection. I started noticing her absence even when she was in the room. Like she was performing her life instead of living it. Everything looked the same on the outside, but the feeling was gone. The spark, the attention, the way she used to light up when I walked in. That light was somewhere else now, or with someone else. I didn't want to believe it. For weeks, I tried to logic my way out of it. I told myself couples drift, that maybe we were just in a weird phase, that maybe she really was busy, that maybe I was projecting because I'd been stressed, overworked, and underslept. But that shirt, that damn shirt, had changed something in me. It wasn't the shirt itself, or the receipt. It was what they represented. A break in the story, a crack in the routine, something that didn't line up no matter how I turned it. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee the rest. Like how she stopped saying, "I love you," unless I said it first. Like how she'd flinch, subtly, when I reached for her hand in public. Like how she once called me babe in the middle of a conversation, then immediately corrected herself to Alex. Like she'd realized she was on the wrong script. I remembered how she joked a few months back that she needed 2 versions of her keychain because she kept mixing up which keys were for what. I thought she meant the office. I laughed. But now I wasn't so sure. One night, I opened her laptop while she was asleep, just to check the calendar we usually shared. The browser history had been cleared. That had never happened before. There wasn't even anything to find. Just the absence of evidence. And somehow that was worse. It made me feel crazy, like I was trying to build a case without proof, connecting shadows to shadows. But when you live with someone long enough, you know their rhythms. You know when something's off, even if you can't explain why. And Sarah was off. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. And now I couldn't stop watching. By the time the following week rolled around, I wasn't sleeping much. It wasn't just stress. It was the kind of unrest that comes from not knowing. The waiting, the second guessing, the constant replays in your head. It eats at you, makes you question everything. Her smile, her laugh, every delay in her response, every pause in her sentence, turns your life into a slow unraveling of things you once took for granted. So I stopped waiting. That Thursday evening, Sarah told me she had to meet with a branding consultant about a new client project. Her tone was casual, like it had been every other time. She even added a little sigh about how she wished she could just stay home in sweats and binge old movies. I smiled, kissed her cheek, told her to have a good time, watched her drive off. Then I grabbed my keys and followed her. I stayed far enough behind that she wouldn't notice. The city traffic helped. So did the fact that she didn't seem to be looking over her shoulder at all. I remember thinking that. She wasn't worried. She wasn't checking. She wasn't hiding like someone with a guilty conscience. Because that would have meant she thought about me. Thought about the risk. The possibility of being seen. But she didn't. She drove past the office. Past the cafes she usually name-dropped. She turned off the main road and parked in a quiet residential neighborhood I didn't recognize. I pulled into a spot a block away, engine off. From where I sat, I had a clear view of the apartment complex. Older building, brick facade, dim yellow lights in the stairwell. I watched as she got out of the car, smoothing her dress, phone in hand. No laptop, no paperwork. Just her, dressed nice, not too formal but not casual either. The kind of outfit you pick when you're trying to look good for someone who already knows you do. She walked up to the door like she'd done it 100 times. And then he stepped out. Tall, lean, late 30s maybe, short dark hair, black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The moment he saw her, he smiled. That slow, easy kind of smile that doesn't just say I know you. It says I've missed you. She smiled back. They didn't hesitate. She stepped into his arms, and they kissed. Not a polite greeting. Not a cheek kiss. Not a friends who used to date kind of kiss. It was full on. Slow. Familiar. I didn't move. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I felt my lungs burn. I reached for my phone and snapped a photo. Then another. And one more as they turned and went inside, hand in hand. The timestamp said 7:17 p.m. I sat there in my car for a long time. Long after they were gone. Long after the front door closed behind them and the street grew quiet again. I wasn't shocked, not really. Deep down, I think I already knew what I'd find. I didn't follow her to prove something to myself. I followed her because I needed the confirmation to be undeniable. I needed to stop making excuses, stop rationalizing, stop telling myself I was overreacting. Because now I had it. Not a theory, not a suspicion, not a bad gut feeling. Proof. Clear. Real. Impossible to twist. She was cheating on me. And the man she was cheating with was R. I didn't go home right away. Couldn't. My hands were shaking, and I felt cold all over. Numb in some places, burning in others. I ended up driving to a gas station on the other side of town, parking next to the air pumps and just sitting there. What was I supposed to do now? Text her? Confront her when she came home? Should I scream? Demand the truth? But she'd already given it to me without saying a word. That was the part that broke something in me. Not the kiss. Not the man. Not even the hand-holding. It was the fact that she looked happy. Effortlessly so. Unbothered. She wasn't sneaking around with panic in her eyes. She was glowing. Comfortable. Like she wasn't doing something wrong. Like she wasn't betraying someone who loved her. Like I didn't even exist in that moment. When I finally got back to the house, it was nearly midnight. The lights were still off. Her car wasn't in the driveway yet. I waited. She came home around 12:40 a.m. Walked in with her heels in one hand, hair slightly undone. She looked relaxed, breezy. She tossed her purse on the table and smiled at me like nothing had happened. "You're still up?" she asked. "Couldn't sleep," I said. She kissed my forehead. "Long day." I nodded. She went upstairs and took a shower. I stood in the living room, phone still in my hand, staring at the photo on the screen. Her and R. Locked together in that doorway like they didn't have a care in the world. Like I wasn't in the picture. And maybe I wasn't. Maybe I never really was. I didn't say anything to her that night. Or the next morning. I watched her make coffee like she always did, humming some half-forgotten song under her breath. She handed me a cup with a sleepy smile, asked if I wanted eggs. And it hit me right then. She wasn't worried. She wasn't anxious about getting caught. She wasn't acting guilty. No scrambling to cover her tracks. No late-night confessions. She had slipped into this double life like it was routine. Like it was sustainable. like she had already decided she could get away with it. That was when something in me went quiet. I didn't confront her. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I just watched. I smiled back, told her the eggs sounded great, pretended everything was fine, because now I wasn't chasing answers. I wasn't trying to convince myself I was wrong. Now I was paying attention. If she wanted to act like this life she was building was real, I could do the same. But behind the smile, I started making a list. Because this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a one-time thing. And it wasn't going to stop on its own. She wasn't sorry. She didn't even think I knew. But I did. And I wasn't going to let her walk away like none of it mattered. Once I stopped pretending I didn't know, everything changed. Not on the outside. On the outside, nothing shifted at all. I still woke up at the same time. Still went to work. Still listened to Sarah talk about her day while I nodded at the right moments. Still laughed when I was supposed to. Still slept next to her at night. But internally, something detached. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was an observer. I started paying attention to things I'd never bothered tracking before. Dates, times, routes, patterns. When she left, when she came back, how long she stayed gone. I didn't need to follow her again. I already knew where she was going. What mattered now was how often and how carefully she spaced it out. I checked our joint bank statements during my lunch breaks. At first glance, everything looked normal. Then I started noticing the repetition. Same boutique hotel charges, always midweek. Same parking garage near that apartment complex. Same coffee shop, sometimes twice in one day. And once you see repetition, you can't unsee intention. This wasn't spontaneous. This was scheduled. I pulled location data from our shared car app. She took the same route every time she said she was meeting clients. Same turns. Same side streets. Same final stop. I marked them in my notes app, labeling nothing, just dates and times. It felt strange, cataloging my own marriage like a case file. But emotion had stopped being useful. What surprised me most wasn't how long it had been happening. It was how organized it was. I found a receipt in the glove compartment a few days later. Pharmacy. Emergency contraception. Travel-size deodorant. Purchased 2 days before one of her late meetings. I sat in the driver's seat with it in my hands, staring straight ahead, feeling nothing but a dull pressure behind my eyes. We hadn't been in * made in weeks. That receipt told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a lapse. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't someone feeling lonely or neglected. This was someone managing risk, planning ahead, protecting the version of her life she wanted to keep intact. I realized then that I wasn't competing with anyone. I'd already lost. She wasn't choosing between me and him. She'd built a system where she didn't have to choose at all. She had allocated me a role, stable, predictable, safe. The background, the cover story, the person who paid half the bills and asked the right amount of questions. And he had the rest. Once I understood that, the anger faded. Not because I forgave her, but because anger assumes you're still part of the equation. I wasn't. I was an accessory, fixture, something useful but replaceable if needed. So I adjusted. I stopped asking questions, stopped checking in, stopped wondering where she was when she ran late. I became exactly what she needed me to be, unbothered, trusting, absent in the ways that mattered. And in the quiet space that created, I started preparing. I copied everything onto a flash drive. Photos, receipts, statements, location logs. I organized them by date, labeled folders, backed them up twice. I opened a new email account she didn't know about and sent copies there. I changed passwords on my personal accounts, redirected my direct deposit, opened a new savings account in my name only. I didn't do any of it in a rush. I did it calmly, methodically. The more I worked, the clearer everything became. Not just what she was doing, but what I needed to do next. There was no dramatic confrontation waiting at the end of this. No shouting match. No emotional showdown where she'd cry and deny and accuse me of not being present enough. That would have been for her benefit. This was for mine. At night, she still curled up beside me, still rested her head on my chest, still traced lazy circles on my arm while we watched TV. And I let her. Not because it meant anything, but because it confirmed something important. She was comfortable. Comfortable enough to believe she'd won. And that was the moment I truly understood my role. I wasn't the husband anymore. I wasn't the partner. I wasn't even the obstacle. I was the exit strategy. The stable point she'd pivot away from once everything else was lined up. The fallback she'd eventually abandon once she didn't need cover anymore. The person she assumed would be shocked, hurt, emotional, and therefore predictable. She had underestimated one thing. I wasn't reacting. I was leaving. Quietly. Completely. On my terms. And by the time she realized I was no longer playing the role she'd assigned me, there would be nothing left to argue about. Because I wouldn't be there to hear it. From the outside, everything still looked the same. She kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Left motivational notes on the fridge. Sent the occasional heart emoji when I texted her something about dinner or errands. We still had our routines, laundry on Sundays, groceries on Wednesdays, movie nights whenever our schedules lined up. And when they didn't, we blamed work or exhaustion, or the kind of general busyness couples grow used to pretending is normal. But inside, I wasn't part of it anymore. I had stepped out of the frame. She didn't know it, of course. Sarah still believed I was playing my part. She didn't see the shift. Or maybe she did and didn't care, as long as I wasn't asking questions or catching on. Either way, she kept up the show and I let her. Because while she played at keeping things normal, I was building the end. Quietly. Carefully. Every day I did something. One day I called a lawyer. I didn't give my name at first, just asked for a consultation. The firm came highly recommended, known for discretion and clean, efficient outcomes. When I met with the attorney, I brought the flash drive. We sat in a room with no windows, no interruptions, and I laid out everything I had. Photos, dates, receipts, logs, even the pharmacy slip with the emergency contraception and deodorant. She flipped through each folder like she'd seen it all before. When she looked up, her voice was calm. You have more than enough. This isn't a gray area. I nodded. I knew that already, but hearing it from someone with a legal background gave it weight. Finality. We talked about options. Timing. Property. Financial accounts. I learned that because our names were both on the lease but most of the assets were in my name, I had more control than I thought. She walked me through what I'd need to document moving forward. Nothing dramatic. Just clean records. The kind of thing that spoke louder in court than arguments ever could. I left her office with a checklist, a deadline, and, for the first time in months, a sense of clarity. The next day, I made copies of our joint keys. I kept the spares in a box in the garage under an old toolbox she never touched. I bought a new external drive and backed up all our shared documents. I canceled a planned weekend getaway Sarah had been hinting at for weeks. Said work got in the way. She didn't question it. That Friday, I visited a storage unit across town and paid 6 months up front in cash. I started moving out the things she wouldn't notice at first. Extra clothes, some of my tools, family heirlooms tucked in a box in the closet. She didn't even realize they were gone. Or if she did, she didn't ask. She was too busy maintaining the script. She'd still mention future plans. A beach trip in August. A dinner with her parents. Maybe buying a place in the fall. I nodded through all of it, smiled when I needed to, played the part of the man who didn't know his world was falling apart. But I did know, and that made all the difference. I started watching how she lied. It was almost an art form. How naturally she switched tones, shifted topics, covered gaps with laughter or subtle redirection. I used to admire her quick thinking. Now I cataloged it, studied it. When she told me she was staying late at the office, I marked the time. When she said she was with friends, I noted who she said and what she claimed they were doing. And when the lies overlapped or contradicted each other, I saved those, too. I wasn't looking to confront her with them. I was just collecting enough truth to ensure I never had to explain myself later. It was strange how detached I felt. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I wasn't jealous or broken or desperate to fix it. I wasn't even heartbroken, not in the traditional sense. What I felt was emptier than that. like the grief had passed through me already, and what was left was just focus. Some nights, I'd lie awake beside her while she slept, wondering how long she planned to keep this up. If she was waiting for me to notice, or hoping I never would, or maybe she was just stringing both lives along until one of them collapsed on its own. But I wasn't going to collapse. She'd built her second life on my blind spots, my trust, my silence, and I was done being silent. One night, while she was in the shower, I checked her bag. I didn't do it often, maybe twice before, never for long. But this time I had a purpose. I wasn't looking for evidence. I already had that. I was looking for a signal, something to tell me it was almost time. Inside the side pocket was a napkin from the cafe downtown. Written on it in the same quick handwriting as the coffee receipt I'd found weeks earlier was a note. Same room. Don't be late. No phone. No name. No date. No signature. But I didn't need one. Folded next to it was another pharmacy receipt. Plan B and an energy drink. Dated 2 days ago. We hadn't touched each other in a month. I stared at the receipt for a long time. Not because it surprised me, but because it didn't. There was no uncertainty left. Not even the illusion of it. She was gone. Fully. Willingly. Strategically. And I wasn't a victim in this. Not anymore. I was just the last one out the door. I didn't go through her things again for a few days. Not because I was over it, but because I didn't need more proof. Still, that quiet itch wouldn't let go. Not until I looked one last time. It was late. She was asleep. I opened her purse, not out of paranoia, but out of certainty. I already knew what I'd find. What I didn't expect was how casual it all felt. A crumpled napkin, tucked in beside her makeup bag. Another note, same handwriting as before. Same room. Don't be late. No phone. No name. No explanation. Just routine. Right next to it, another pharmacy receipt. Plan B. A canned energy drink. Dated 2 days ago. We hadn't been close, physically or otherwise, in weeks. I didn't feel shock. Or even anger. Just a strange, hollow kind of clarity. The kind that settles into your bones and makes everything still. She wasn't spiraling. She wasn't panicked. She was in control. This wasn't a fling. It wasn't a slip. It was a separate life, one she designed carefully, and kept me just far enough outside of. I wasn't betrayed once. I was phased out piece by piece, until the only role I had left was pretending not to notice. It ended in the most ordinary way imaginable. I stopped at a cafe near her office one morning. I didn't plan to see her, but there she was, laughing with a group of coworkers. I stayed back, unnoticed. One of them teased her about how she managed her time. Sarah laughed and replied without hesitation. The only trick is not mixing up which keys go where. Everyone laughed. Except me. She didn't mean for me to hear it, but it didn't matter. I drove home. That evening, the locks had already been changed. For her. Her things were boxed, labeled, stacked neatly by the door. I left no note. For the first time in months, I went to sleep without needing to pretend. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something simple. Not revenge. Not pain. Just freedom.